The storm rolled in without warning, sweeping across the open valley with a force that bent cottonwoods and rattled the tin roof of the old ranch house. Rain fell in sheets, slashing at the earth, drowning out every sound but thunder. In the black of night, the pastures blurred into a single restless sea. Lightning broke the sky, and in its flash a figure stumbled. An exhausted Mustang mare, sides heaving, legs trembling with each step. Her strength gave out on the low slope near the creek. She fell hard, a cry tearing from her throat, and moments later the foal slipped into the world. The birth should have meant hope, but the mare's body was spent. Her breaths came shallow, fading into silence as the storm raged on. The foal lifted its head weakly, blinking against the rain, small chest quivering with effort. Alone, it had no chance. From the shadow of the pines came another figure, a shepherd mix, dark-coated, moving low to the ground. Her name was Lark. She had spent years roaming the fence lines of Samuel's ranch, guardian of the yard, sentinel of the fields. Tonight, something deeper than habit had pulled her here. Nose to the wind, she followed the scent of blood and birth through mud and lightning until she found the foal shivering beside its mother's still body. For a moment she only stood, rain streaking her fur flat, ears tuned to the coyotes already circling the ridges. The pup she once was would have turned away, but Lark was no longer young. Her life had been shaped by protecting others, and instinct surged with clarity. She stepped between the foal and the darkness, her body tense, tail stiff. A sharp bark broke through the storm. Another followed. The coyotes hesitated. The foal tried to rise, spindly legs slipping in the wet grass, collapsing again. Lark moved closer, nudging its neck, curling her body against it to share warmth. The animal pressed into her side, trembling but alive. For hours she lay there, unyielding against the cold, eyes never closing. By dawn, the storm broke into silence. Fog clung low, and the world smelled of wet earth and ashwood. Samuel found them then, riding the fence line to check for storm damage. He reined in sharply at the sight. His loyal dog curled protectively around a newborn foal, both soaked to the bone. He dismounted slowly, boots sinking in the softened ground. "Lark," he murmured, as though afraid to shatter the fragile picture. She lifted her head, but didn't move from her post. Her eyes, sharp and steady, told him what words could not. This foal was hers to guard. Samuel crouched beside the mare, already knowing what he'd find. His hand rested briefly on her cold flank before he turned to the foal. It looked at him through lashes heavy with rain, breath shallow but determined. Its legs wobbled as it pushed up once more, failing, then trying again. "Lord help us," Samuel whispered. He knew the truth. Orphan foals rarely survived, not without milk, not without constant care. He had seen enough die to carry the weight of memory. Yet the sight before him unsettled all certainty. A ranch dog, no matter how loyal, had chosen to stand guard over something wild. She had braved the storm, fought off predators, given warmth where there should have been none. The foal rose finally, trembling, each step a battle. It staggered forward, sides brushing against Lark's coat. She stayed beside it, steadying its balance with her presence alone. Samuel stood, heart clenched at the stubbornness of both creatures. The wild and the tamed joined in defiance of fate. He could have led the foal away, forced Lark back toward the barn. Instead, he stepped back, allowing them space. His hand rested on the saddle horn, as if anchoring himself against the weight of what he saw. Some bonds weren't born of choice but necessity, written in storms and sealed in silence. The sky cleared in streaks of pale light, the first warmth of morning spilling across the valley. The foal, still unsteady, pressed its muzzle to Lark's shoulder as though guided by some secret memory. She accepted it, eyes half closed, tail twitching once in a rare gesture of contentment. Samuel let out a long breath, The kind that came when a man knew his life had shifted in ways he couldn't yet name. The foal had lived through its first night, but survival was a long road ahead. Lark, however, had already chosen. That choice would demand everything from them all. In the quiet that followed, Samuel mounted again. Behind him, the foal stumbled forward, each step clumsy yet determined, Lark nudging it toward the safety of the barn. He watched once more before turning his horse toward home. The image lingered, dog and foal, side by side, defying the storm's intent. It was a beginning neither man nor beast had sought, yet it was already written into the bones of the land. Something fragile had been carried through the night, and though Samuel knew the struggle was only starting, he could not look away. The foal's survival was uncertain. Lark's loyalty was not. And as the sun broke the last shreds of storm, Samuel understood one thing with startling clarity. Whatever future lay ahead for the wild creature now staggering at his dog's side, it would not be decided by chance alone. The weeks that followed tested every measure of patience Samuel possessed. A foal without its dam had little chance, and he had seen too many fail. Yet each time he approached the barn, expecting silence, he found life still clinging. Ash, as he came to call the colt for the faint gray smudge on his dark coat, grew under constant watch. Not by Samuel alone, but by Lark, who refused to leave the stall unless coaxed. She became his guard, his warmth, his reason to rise. Ash wavered often, legs trembling as though the ground might fall away beneath him. Samuel mixed formula, fed him from bottles, and cursed the mess when more spilled onto straw than made it down the colt's throat. But when Samuel left in frustration, Lark was there, nudging Ash gently, licking away the milk that clung to his muzzle, urging him back to try again. Somehow, with her persistence, he learned. What unsettled Samuel most was how the colt looked to the dog, not him, when fear struck. A sudden noise in the rafters, the shadow of an owl overhead. Ash pressed himself against Lark's side, finding calm in her steady presence. It was unnatural, this bond between predator and prey, but no argument Samuel muttered changed it. They had chosen one another. Summer softened the valley, and the colt began to venture beyond the barn doors. His legs lengthened, his steps steadier, though still awkward. Lark trotted beside him, ears flicking to every sound. If Ash strayed too far, she darted ahead, circling him back with low barks until he settled near her flank. Samuel leaned on the fence rails, watching, torn between wonder and unease. He feared the colt would never learn what it meant to be a horse if he grew beneath a dog's shadow. Yet to separate them felt crueler still. Neighbors came by, drawn by curiosity. They laughed at the sight, joked about Samuel running a circus. One man muttered that such strangeness wouldn't last, that a wild thing would turn wild again no matter who raised it. Samuel shrugged, but the words gnawed at him. Was he preserving a life, or condemning it to confusion? He tried to harden himself, to see the foal as temporary, but each day the bond deepened. One evening, as dusk pooled violet across the fields, Ash collapsed in the pasture. His body shivered, sides slick with sweat. Samuel rushed, heart pounding. Certain death had come at last. He carried water, checked for fever, cursed his own helplessness. Through it all, Lark never left the colt's side. She lay pressed against him, nose buried in his mane, whimpering softly each time his breath stuttered. Samuel dozed in the dirt, too weary to move, and when dawn returned, Ash stirred. He pushed weakly to his feet, wobbling yet alive. Samuel knew then what had carried the colt through the night. Not medicine, not care, loyalty. From that day, his doubts thinned. Ash followed Lark with a devotion that outshone any tether. When the colt startled at rustling brush, she steadied him. When he tested his growing legs, she raced ahead, barking encouragement until he caught her pace. Samuel watched as Ash's muscles filled, his gait growing surer. the wildness not stripped away but tempered. He was learning resilience, shaped by companionship rather than solitude. Still, Samuel could not ignore the whispers carried on the wind. Rumors spread of officials rounding up Mustangs in nearby valleys, corralling them for auction or relocation. Ash had been born wild, and though Samuel knew he was different, he feared the law would not see it. Each time riders passed the ridge, Lark stiffened, growling low, her body angled protectively toward Ash. Samuel shared her unease. The world had a way of taking back what it claimed as its own. Yet for the moment, the valley belonged to them. One dawn, Samuel stood at the barn door, coffee steaming in his hand, as Ash tore across the pasture. His mane lifted in the wind, his stride long and sure. At the crest of the rise he reared, hooves flashing against the sky. A creature both untamed and loyal. Below him, Lark barked, her tail beating the grass in wild delight. Samuel felt a strange weight lift then, as though watching a story unfold that was never his to command. He didn't know how long the peace would last. Perhaps days, perhaps years. But in that moment, beneath the widening light, he believed in the bond carved between dog and horse. It was a sight too strange for logic, too beautiful for doubt. And though uncertainty shadowed the edges of his thoughts, he could not turn away from the truth. Whatever trials lay ahead, neither would face them alone. The first sign came as a letter, creased from travel, stamped with the insignia Samuel had long dreaded. It announced a scheduled roundup of Mustangs across the valley, citing herd management, public safety, and government authority. Ash was named only indirectly, but Samuel felt the noose tighten. A horse born wild remained, in their eyes, wild property. He set the letter down without speaking, yet Lark, as if sensing his unease, pressed her head against his knee. The day arrived too soon. Trucks rolled across the dirt road, white with decals sharp against the sun. Men stepped out, efficient, carrying ropes, panels, and the weight of law. Samuel argued, his voice rough with a desperation he had not used in years. He explained the foal's birth, the mother's death, the months of struggle, the strange but undeniable bond with his dog. His words found no purchase. Rules were rules, they said. Ash belonged with the others. When they approached the pasture, Ash froze at the sight of strangers. His muscles coiled, eyes wide, nostrils flaring. He stepped back, but the men moved with practiced speed. Ropes whistled through the air. Lark lunged forward, teeth bared, a growl tearing from her chest. She placed herself squarely between Ash and the intruders, barking until her voice cracked. The men hesitated, not out of respect but from wariness of her fury. Ash bolted then, hooves striking sparks on stone as he circled wildly. The ropes missed, tangling in the dust. Samuel shouted, tried to stall them, but numbers pressed against him. Two men cornered Ash, driving him toward the open trailer ramp. Lark darted, snapping at boots, forcing them back. She was shoved aside, landing hard, but even then she scrambled up, throwing herself forward again. Ash reared, striking the wooden rails. His cry split the air, frantic, betrayed. It took 4 men to force him up the ramp, ropes cutting deep across his chest. Samuel's hands shook, useless at his sides, rage hollow in the face of inevitability. Lark clawed at the ramp, her body straining to reach him, but the doors slammed shut with finality. The echo hung in the valley long after the trucks pulled away. That night the ranch was quieter than Samuel had ever known. The pasture stood empty, the barn felt hollow, and the air carried the ghost of hooves. Lark prowled the fences, nose to the ground, searching for a trail she could not follow. At dawn she howled, the sound low and mournful, carrying across the hills like a question with no answer. Each evening she returned to the barn, scratching at the stall where Ash once lay, curling herself into straw as though waiting for him to return. Samuel tried to console her, though he barely believed his own words. He brought food, spoke softly, sat beside her when her eyes turned dull with grief. Yet Lark would not eat until he left, as if her hunger could summon the colt back. Samuel felt the years heavy on him then. He had lived long enough to know loss as a neighbor. But watching his dog grieve broke something deeper. She had not saved Ash to lose him to laws written on paper. Seasons shifted. Grass browned, snow fell, rivers froze and thawed. Lark aged swiftly, her muzzle whitening, her gait slowing. But each dawn she still rose, pressing her ears to the wind, waiting for a sound that never came. Samuel wrote letters, made inquiries, asked after the colt with officials and traders. No word returned. In his heart, he feared Ash was gone, broken souled, lost among faceless herds. Yet on an autumn evening, as the sky burned with copper light, something stirred at the edge of the ridge. Samuel heard it first, a cadence not of wind or cattle, but hooves striking earth in measured rhythm. He straightened, heart clenching. Lark lifted her head, ears twitching, body trembling with a spark he thought long gone. The sound grew, steady, closer, undeniable. Samuel gripped the fence rail, breath caught in his chest, as across the haze of dusk shadows began to move. Someone, was coming home. Mist clung to the valley as dawn unfurled, silver light spilling over the ridges. From the haze came shapes, at first only shadows, then horses, a small band moving with measured grace. At their front strode a stallion, tall and scarred, his dark coat burnished with streaks of gray along the mane. Samuel's breath stilled. There was no mistaking him. Ash had returned. The years had carved strength into him. His shoulders broad, his stride commanding, his eyes no longer the timid orbs of a foal but the steady, burning gaze of one who had endured. Yet when his gaze swept the pasture, it softened. He called out, a deep sound that echoed off the hills. Lark answered before Samuel could move. She struggled to her feet, stiff with age, her body trembling with the effort. The dog that had once chased coyotes and defied men now hobbled forward, her steps uneven but unyielding. Ash's ears pricked, and he moved down the slope, each stride carrying him closer until horse and dog stood face to face across the fence line. For a long moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Ash lowered his head, nostrils flaring as he pressed his muzzle against Lark's graying fur. She leaned into him, tail twitching weakly, a soft whine escaping her throat. The years that had stretched between them folded into nothing. Samuel felt the weight of it, standing apart yet bound to the sight. It was not a reunion of chance, but of loyalty, a circle closing at last. The herd behind Ash shifted nervously, uncertain, but he ignored them. His attention belonged wholly to the companion who had once given him life. Lark sagged against the fence, her energy fleeting. Yet in that closeness her eyes shone with a brightness Samuel hadn't seen in months. She had waited, and her waiting had not been in vain. Days passed, and Ash lingered with his band near the ranch. They grazed in the outer fields, never straying far. Each morning, Ash sought Lark, standing sentinel beside her as she dozed in the sun. Samuel brought water, set hay close, watched as horse and dog shared a silence richer than words. He understood then that Ash had not returned for him. He had come for her. But time is a debt that cannot be bargained. Lark's strength waned. Her steps shortened, her breath grew shallow, and her body, once a shield against storms, began to yield. On the final morning, she lay beneath the oak at the edge of the pasture. Samuel sat beside her, his hand on her head, his voice low with gratitude he could not shape into full sentences. Ash stood near, motionless, as though guarding her one last time. When her chest stilled, the valley seemed to dim. Samuel closed her eyes with calloused fingers, his throat tight with grief. Ash remained by the oak until Samuel laid the first spade of earth, then pawed the ground once, a gesture raw with meaning. The herd waited on the ridge, but the stallion stayed, silent, his presence a eulogy in itself. Weeks stretched on, and though Ash eventually rejoined his band, he did not vanish entirely. The herd lingered near the oak, as though bound to it, and Samuel came to see it as a marker not just of death, but of devotion. Each season painted the tree differently: spring blossoms, summer shade, autumn fire, winter frost. Yet beneath it, the memory of a dog and a foal remained. Samuel often stood at the fence, watching Ash thunder across the fields, mane streaming, hooves pounding in fierce declaration. The stallion was wild, untamable, forever marked by freedom. Yet in the way he circled back to the oak, lowering his head before striding on, Samuel knew he carried something more. Not just survival, not just strength, but loyalty, etched into his very being. And as the sun dipped low one evening, casting the land in amber light, Samuel whispered into the quiet, more to himself than to the world. Some bonds defy time, some love does not fade. What a dog gave a foal had become part of the earth itself, a story written in wind and hoofbeats, carried forward long after she was gone.